Kim Novak was born with the name Marilyn Pauline Novak on February 13, 1933, in Chicago, Illinois. She started out as a regular girl and became one of the most memorable movie stars of the 1950s and early 1960s, making a huge impact on movie history. She grew up in a working-class family with Czech roots, and her early years were nothing like the fancy movie star life she would later have. Her dad worked as a history teacher and also helped move freight around, while her mom worked in a factory. Even when she was young, Novak was artistic and liked to do things her own way. These qualities would shape both her movie career and her personal decisions. She went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago because she wanted to become a commercial artist. But life had different plans when someone noticed her during a modeling job, which led her to move to Hollywood, though she wasn't even sure she wanted to go. When Columbia Pictures hired her in the early 1950s, the studio boss Harry Cohn tried to turn her into a replacement for Rita Hayworth. Novak said no. She didn't like how fake Hollywood was. She wouldn't change her name to something that sounded more glamorous, and she openly fought against how the studios tried to control everything. This pushback was unusual and risky for a young actress back then, and it became one of the main things that defined her life and what people remember about her. Novak became famous quickly, but she worked hard for it. Her early movie roles in films like Pushover in 1954 and Picnic in 1955 showed that she had a natural talent for drawing people's attention on screen and showing real emotions, which made her different from other more polished and controlled stars. Her acting in Picnic won her a Golden Globe Award for Most Promising Newcomer and proved she was a serious dramatic actress. Audiences could tell there was something special about her. She showed both weakness and strength, and she was attractive but also thoughtful. Her most famous role was in Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 masterpiece Vertigo, where she played two different characters, Madeline Elster and Judy Barton, acting opposite James Stewart. When the movie first came out, critics had mixed feelings about it, but over time Vertigo has been recognized as one of the greatest films ever made, and Novak's performance is now seen as a huge part of why the film is so powerful and haunting. She brought depth, sadness, and complicated emotions to roles that required her to subtly show changes in identity, desire, and sadness. Very few actresses could show longing and inner struggle with such quiet strength. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, Novak appeared in several important films, including Belle, Book and Candle in 1958, Middle of the Night in 1959, Strangers When We Meet in 1960, and Of Human Bondage in 1964. But even though she was successful, she was really uncomfortable with being famous. The constant attention, people invading her private life, and what the industry expected from her was hard on her. Unlike many other actresses at the time, Novak never completely gave in to what Hollywood wanted, and Hollywood never forgave her for that. In the 1980s, Kim Novak came back to acting quietly but in a way that got people's attention, reminding everyone that her magnetic presence was still just as powerful. She played the elegant and mysterious character Billy Farnsworth in the TV movie Malibu, a role that let her bring depth and emotional layers to a character who had wealth, secrets, and desires. Even in just one TV project, Novak showed the subtle command of an experienced actress who didn't need stardom to get attention anymore. She just needed honesty, restraint, and an unmistakable screen presence. Her most important work of that decade happened between 1986 and 1987 when she joined the cast of the CBS primetime soap opera Falcon Crest. Over 19 episodes, Novak played the mysterious Kit Marlowe, a woman whose past was as shadowy as her reasons for doing things. The role was perfect for Novak's ability to show inner conflict and emotional complexity with just a look or a pause. Viewers were attracted to Kit's guarded elegance, her emotional wounds, and her quiet strength, qualities that matched Novak's own public image as a Hollywood legend who had always resisted being put in a simple category. Even though producers really wanted her to continue into the next season, Novak said no. At that time, she was deeply focused on writing her autobiography, which she was planning to call Through My Eyes, choosing reflection and self-expression, rather than spending another year in the demanding TV spotlight. Novak's final leading role came in 1990 with the British-German drama The Children, where she played Rose Sellers. The film, which was somber and thoughtful in tone, was a fitting final chapter for an actress whose later work focused on emotional truth instead of glamour. Critics responded positively, noting the quiet dignity and emotional authenticity Novak brought to the role. Instead of chasing commercial success, she chose a project that allowed her to explore human vulnerability and strength, themes that had increasingly defined her life and career. Her last film appearance came soon after in the 1991 psychological thriller Liebstrom, where she played Lillian Anderson Munson, a woman who was terminally ill and struggling with memory, loss, and unresolved passion. While the role itself was demanding and emotionally intense, what happened behind the scenes was far more troubling. Novak reportedly had many disagreements with director Mike Figgis, and the constant tension made the production really unpleasant for her. What should have been a meaningful goodbye to movies instead became a draining and disheartening experience. That negative experience left a lasting mark on her. Disappointed by the creative conflicts and pressures of modern filmmaking, Novak turned down a later offer from acclaimed French director Claude Berry. She was also considered for a remake of Belle, Book and Candle, the film that had once made her a screen icon, but the project never happened. Faced with opportunities that no longer excited her and an industry that had changed in ways she found exhausting, Novak made a firm decision. Rather than go through another round of compromises, she walked away from Hollywood completely, ending her long, often difficult journey on her own terms. During the mid-1950s, when she was at the peak of her fame and desirability, Kim Novak's personal life played out like a dramatic and turbulent Hollywood screenplay. Her romantic relationships connected her with powerful, controversial, and groundbreaking people, showing both the appeal and the darker sides of the studio system that controlled her career. Among these relationships was her involvement with Ramfis Trujillo, the notorious son of Dominican dictator Rafael Leonidas Trujillo, a connection that showed how Novak's celebrity attracted men who were used to privilege and power far beyond the movie industry. Even more significant was her relationship in 1957 with legendary entertainer Sammy Davis Jr., a romance that crossed one of Hollywood's most rigid and shameful boundaries: race. At a time when interracial relationships weren't just frowned upon but actively stopped, Novak and Davis's involvement became a flashpoint of racial prejudice, institutional fear, and brutal intimidation. According to a BBC documentary, Columbia Pictures chief Harry Cohn, determined to protect Novak's carefully manufactured screen image and to avoid scandal, allegedly used mob connections to force an end to the relationship. Davis was reportedly threatened with horrific violence, including being blinded or having his legs broken unless he married a black woman within 48 hours. The episode remains one of the most chilling examples of how the studio system controlled actors' private lives, and it left a permanent mark on everyone involved, exposing the cruel realities behind Hollywood's glamorous appearance. Over the years, Novak's romantic life continued to attract public interest. She was linked to various notable people including actor Michael Brandon, basketball icon Wilt Chamberlain, and British actor David Hemmings, relationships that showed both her wide social circle and her independence from convention. In 1959, she became engaged to director Richard Quine, a creative partnership that mixed personal affection with professional collaboration, though the engagement ultimately didn't lead to marriage. Novak's first marriage came several years later when she married English actor Richard Johnson on March 15, 1965. Their union, though brief and ending in divorce on May 26, 1966, was marked by mutual respect rather than bitterness. Remarkably, the two remained friends after their separation, showing Novak's capacity for grace and emotional maturity even when relationships ended. That same year, Novak made a decisive and life-changing choice. She walked away from Hollywood. Disappointed with the industry's pressures and longing for a quieter, more authentic life, she moved to Big Sur, California. There, surrounded by rugged coastline and natural beauty, she embraced a completely different life, raising horses, painting, and reconnecting with herself. Though she appeared in films occasionally, her focus shifted away from stardom and toward personal fulfillment and artistic expression. Fate stepped in during 1974 in the most unexpected way when one of Novak's prized Arabian mares got sick with colic. An equine veterinarian named Robert Malloy was called to make a house visit. That routine professional visit became the beginning of a deep and lasting love. Malloy, who was grounded and compassionate, offered Novak a partnership far removed from the glamour and manipulation she had known before. The couple married on March 12, 1976, and through this union, Novak gained 2 adult stepchildren, embracing family life with warmth and commitment. Together, Novak and Malloy built a log home along the Williamson River near Chiloquin, Oregon, a peaceful retreat that symbolized her final and complete departure from Hollywood spotlight. There she lived a life defined by nature, creativity, and emotional stability, far from the studio contracts and public scrutiny that once controlled her every move. Their marriage lasted for more than 4 decades, a rare and profound success story after a life of upheaval and reinvention. Robert Malloy passed away on November 27, 2020, marking the end of a long and loving chapter in Novak's life. Yet, the legacy of their partnership and of Novak's courage to choose authenticity over fame remains a powerful testament to her strength. Her journey through love, loss, and self-discovery reveals not just the story of a Hollywood icon, but of a woman who ultimately took back control of her life on her own terms. At 92 years old, Kim Novak looks back on Hollywood's golden age with a clarity that only time can provide. Distance has softened old wounds, stripped away myths, and allowed her to speak not as a studio creation or a reluctant icon, but as a woman who lived through an era that demanded silence, obedience, and sacrifice. Among the many towering figures of her early career, Tony Curtis remains one of the most fascinating and misunderstood presences in her life. For years, people wanted a fairy tale, Novak reflects. They wanted chemistry without complication, glamour without consequence. But real life doesn't work that way. And neither did Tony. Curtis, already a rising star when Novak entered the Hollywood system, embodied the charisma and unpredictability of 1950s stardom. He was handsome, ambitious, and sharply aware of his own appeal. Novak remembers being both attracted to and cautious of him. Tony had this restless energy, she says. He could light up a room the moment he walked in, but he was never really still. He was always chasing something: approval, excitement, love, and sometimes he didn't know which one he wanted most. Their relationship, like many studio-era romances, existed under constant watchfulness. Publicists shaped stories, photographers staged moments, and executives monitored behavior. Novak recalls how little privacy young actors were given. "You didn't just date someone," she explains. "You dated them in headlines, in gossip columns, in whispers behind soundstage doors." What Novak now emphasizes most strongly is how different Curtis was in private versus public. "The world saw Tony the movie star," she says. "But I saw Tony the insecure boy who never quite believed he was enough." She speaks without bitterness, acknowledging both his charm and his flaws. He could be incredibly kind, funny, generous, then suddenly distant or defensive. Fame didn't heal him. If anything, it made his fears louder. Novak also addresses rumors that have stuck around for decades, choosing honesty over sensationalism. "There was passion, yes," she admits, "but there was also competition, ego, and pressure. We were both young, both controlled by studios, both trying to survive in a system that rewarded illusion more than truth." She rejects the overly simple stories that once defined their relationship. "People like to say someone was a villain or a heartbreaker," Novak says. But Tony wasn't a monster. He was a man shaped by his past, by poverty, by ambition, and by a Hollywood machine that encouraged excess and discouraged reflection. Perhaps most touching, Novak speaks about the emotional cost of loving someone who was constantly in motion. "I needed depth, quiet, authenticity," she explains. "Tony thrived on momentum. Neither of us was wrong. We were just mismatched." Now, with the wisdom of age, Novak holds no resentment. "I don't regret knowing him," she says softly. "He was part of my journey, part of my education. Through Tony, I learned what I could not accept, what I would not compromise." She pauses before adding one final thought, one that reframes the past with compassion. "If Tony were here today, I think he'd want to be understood, not idolized. And that's the truth people deserve. Not the legend, not the gossip, but the human being underneath." At 92, Kim Novak no longer feels the need to protect illusions, Hollywood's or anyone else's. In speaking honestly about Tony Curtis, she offers something far more valuable than scandal: perspective. And in doing so, she reminds us that behind every golden age romance lies a complicated, fragile, deeply human story.